Today on LA Currents, in 1954, a firefighter founded a brotherhood, an organization of black firefighters known as the Stentorians. Next, we have a cultural conversation about the significant rise in hate crimes and racism against the Asian and Pacific Islander communities. First, we spend some time with Lynn Doherty of SALEF and learn more about their long-standing goal to advocate for democracy and social justice. Well, we've all seen the stories of the crisis at the border, but there is so much more to learn, which is why I'm delighted to be joined today by the Executive Director of the Salvadoran American Leadership and Educational Fund, Lynn Doherty. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right, this really is personal to you.
I am the daughter of immigrant parents. My father immigrated here fleeing civil war, as well as my mother from Guatemala and El Salvador. And so I've intentionally made my work to be within my Central American community here in Los Angeles.
Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, there is really a remarkable story with a lot of pathos and a lot of heart and a lot of tragedy taking place right now, but there's a lot of misconception about asylum seekers and why they're coming. And what is the true story about why someone would actually leave their country?
A lot of violence that is existing in those countries that are pushing people to flee. A lot of gender-based violence, a lot of gang violence, environmental refugees, people that are fleeing these conditions that are, happening in their countries. We need to understand these root causes in order to be able to change our immigration system.
Are you optimistic?
I am. I think that I took a deep breath in January when we had a new administration, because I knew that it was, for some of our families, it really was a life or death situation, but also of the span of decades of separations of family. And so there's real new hope with the new Citizenship Act and ensuring that people that have been here, that have been making meaningful contributions to our country, that are law-abiding citizens, that are here and have been here, have the opportunity for the first time to be able to, have the ability maybe to even go back to their country and have a pathway to a residency, a pathway to citizenship. This is their home, and I think that is why I'm optimistic, because I know that the change that needs to happen is going to happen, not only because of SALEF, but because of all the organizations and the people in this wonderful city, in this country, that know the change that needs to happen and are making the change happen.
There's a new Immigration Act that President Biden has put forth. Has it made the process any easier, or are there changes that are happening that would affect what you are able to do with these asylum seekers, and even those who are already here in the U.S. that are perhaps not documented at this time and are looking to actually become legal citizens?
We definitely have seen a shift, and I get, for community-based organizations that are supporting immigrant families, the changes couldn't come fast enough because we've had such a backlog, whether it's through citizenship and citizenship applications and people being able to become citizens, or seeing denials of asylum seekers and the changes that were made to policies internally and memos with USCIS. And we're starting to see shifts, and we're starting to see we're moving in the right direction, but it's not coming fast enough. And so it really needs to be an overhaul of our immigration system that needs to take place in order for the legal processes that are already in place, like becoming a citizen. It shouldn't take you 1.5 years, 2 years to become a citizen, or it shouldn't, or seeing those high rates of denial, taking away the violence component when it comes to asylum seekers, and having those provisions being removed really hurt asylum seekers, or even women that were fleeing based on gender violence. So all of those things that we are hopeful for this administration, and why we put our support into the change that we saw that we needed, it was because we need this change urgently.
Okay, so I need a little bit of a clarification, because there are youth that have been here in the United States for a certain period of time. And I know DACA, but I don't know, what's the difference between TPS and DACA?
Well, the similarity is that it's basically a deferral. It's not permanent status. It is basically like a permit for you to be here that has to be renewed every 18 months.
Okay.
And so in that they're both similar. TPS is temporary protected status, and temporary protected status is basically a band-aid immigration remedy that is it's temporary, and it's temporary because like I mentioned, you have to renew every so often, and it's a very vetted process. You have to ensure that you're following the law, that you're paying taxes, that you're an upstanding citizen, and it's temporary for that reason. But you have people that have been on TPS for over 20 years.
Oh my.
So people from countries like Central America, like El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua are the 3 countries in Central America that are beneficiaries of TPS, where you have over 250,000 TPS holders right from that region. The reason why people from certain countries become eligible for TPS is because their country was either a natural disaster or some that prevents them from going back home. So in the case of Central America, it was the earthquakes, Hurricane Mitch, and things like that happened in the early 2000s that made it possible for them to apply for something like TPS. Now DACA is for youth that basically youth that came here at a very young age and did not come here obviously on their own willingly because they were children, and they are then granted a status as long as they meet the requirements, like having attended high school, attending college, and again, very vetted process. Have to have great record, right? No criminal history, paying taxes, and being great citizens. So I think that the takeaway and the similarities on both of these programs is that the people that have these are beneficiaries of these programs are good people. Immigrants that are out there, are working, are going to school, and are making meaningful contributions to our society.
And I'm going to add, because I know that there's a lot of thought that they are taking from the general fund and not putting back in. So I'd imagine that there's also the issue of making sure there's a clarification that these are law-abiding, tax-paying citizens, and those that are not just taking from our system from those that are paying taxes.
Yeah, that conversation, it's always very important to understand and to clarify. Immigrants that are here, that they pay taxes, they are working and making contributions, are law-abiding citizens, like you mentioned, and they are not eligible to receive benefits like a citizen of the United States would be eligible to receive. So there's always a misconception that they're taking from our system. Actually, they pay more taxes. They pay millions and billions of dollars of taxes that they themselves do not get to benefit from. And I would say that they aren't taking anybody's jobs because they're doing the work that other people don't want to do. And so I think that, whether you are an immigrant and you are picking, you're a farm worker, or you're a DACA student who is a medical, student, or even a doctor, right? Those are both equally as important to our society, and it are exactly what immigrants do to our country, which is make meaningful contributions, and that is historical.
How many clients are you able to serve?
We've helped over 1,000 people become citizens since we initiated our program back in 2017, and we continue to serve, through our scholarship fund, our youth, and our summer youth programs. So SALEF is able to work with about 10,000 people a year.
Bird's eye view of this whole thing seems absolutely overwhelming and almost impossible to even manage. Are you overwhelmed and intimidated, or do you just feel as if every day you're re-energized that you have to be able to make a difference, if not for everyone, at least for a goodly portion?
Every morning I wake up and I feel very fortunate to be able to do this work and really transform my community. Not only my community here, but my community, transnationally. So I think that one of our mantras at work is, the work that we do is transforming lives. And I think that it is very, I haven't had time to stop and think about being overwhelmed, because there's a need and there's a knock on our door, and we have to respond.
I'm sure your parents are very proud of you.
Thank you.
All right. So if people want information, SALEF.org. Well, it was lovely to meet you. Thank you for all of this incredibly important information, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much for having me and giving me the space.
Of course. Their mission was bold and purposeful. Band together and put an end to the discrimination and segregation challenges within the LAFD. We have a heart-to-heart chat with the Stentorian president, LAFD Inspector Gerald Durant. Stentor was the herald of the Greek forces in the Iliad, noted for his loud voice. Well, over the years, the word Stentorian has come to mean one with a bold, powerful voice. So today, I am delighted to be joined by a Stentorian, Gerald Durant, who is also the president of the LA Stentorians. This organization has a very rich, long history. Why was it created in the first place, and who is it designed to help?
Well, when it was first created, it was in 1954, 55. Segregation in the fire service was and the men got together to help desegregate the fire service. And that's been our mission even to today. We want to make sure that unrepresented folks that are in the fire service or could be in the fire service, we want our youth, if they see us, they can believe that they can be us. So we want women, we want Latinos, we want other people that have the diversity of the city of Los Angeles.
Let's go down the what hasn't changed route, and then let's go down the what has changed route.
What has changed is that we have more African Americans on the fire service. We have more women on the fire service. We become more diverse. What hasn't changed, or what is still changing, is the fact that more needs to be done. We're not satisfied with the numbers that we have, and we want to change that. We want our young men and women to believe that this is a career that they can have. And when you're recruiting and you say, hey, have you ever thought about the fire department? And they say, well, I've heard that was hard to do. I have to take hard out and put challenge in that. And he said, it'll be challenging to do. I don't want them to defeat themselves before they start. So the goal is to give them that encouragement, give them that excitement, like, yes, I can do this.
Okay, so what does it take to become a firefighter? What are some of the challenges, but what are the rewards?
I'll say that 3 of your psychological needs are going to be met. You're going to have food, shelter, and clothing for the rest of your life. That's a big issue. Because some of the people that we recruit, they could be homeless. They could be having a hard time at home. They could be the only person that is taking care of several people. So for them to have a position where they can have the ability to help their families and help the community, I think that's where we kind of focus.
Well, speaking of helping, I mean, that's one of the pieces of the Stentorians. You were saying that during the pandemic, and every Thursday you're feeding families.
Yes. It started out by someone looking for volunteers to help them feed families. And then someone else came, a church came and said, hey, can we use some of your folks? And we were like, yes, firefighting is different. It's leadership. It's community activism. It's being there for everybody. It's being the big brother.
And I would think that, even just in this room with all the helmets and the boots and everything, there's a sense of team.
Yes.
You're part of a family.
Part of a family. And it's, we eat together, we sleep together, we go to work, we're working a 24-hour shift, we laugh, we cry together, we suffer together. And when you have that kind of a bond, it makes you walk a little taller, in a sense, and it gives you some type of entitlement to help.
And the mentorship program, are you reaching out to the community, to young people in the community who may or may not want to be firefighters, but could really utilize the wisdom and the mentorship of someone who has succeeded?
The goal is to help in a lot of different ways, but we want good people. Because first, be good people, then you can be a good firefighter. And some of the skills that we have as firefighters, you don't necessarily have to be a firefighter. CPR, first aid, being able to have disaster preparedness, being on that team as well. And we have a program at Dorsey High right now, which is the fire and EMS magnet portion of the school. So we're looking to educate young men and women to give them a sense of confidence where, like I said before, they can walk taller and they can have some sense of purpose in their life. And I think that is essential to creating great communities.
And so what are some of the things that the young people say to you when they come in? I mean, because they're interested or else they wouldn't be here. But what are the things, and I mean, this very contemporary age where we're dealing with a lot of social issues, and there's been an enormous amount of focus on social injustice and some of the heartache that people have experienced. What are they saying to you? Are they worried? Are they excited? Are they thinking that things will or can change?
Well, you know, interesting, we don't really talk about that much, but we talk about being good people and helping. And for us, if you knock on the door, we're going to help you. And it doesn't matter what race, what color, what gender, what size, short, tall, we're going to help you. If this is what you desire to do, I think this is where we make a difference in the community.
I don't know why, and forgive me for this allusion, but while you were talking, my immediate thought was, Mr. Rogers, you know, telling a child, when you're in crisis, look for the helpers. So you're building the helpers.
Yes, we're building the people to help. Because remember, when people need help, they'll call us up. They'll use that simple number, 911. And we're supposed to show up.
There is a beautiful mural on the side of this building. Who is it and what do they represent? And I mean, it's just stunning.
Yeah, we're very proud to have that mural out there. It's Arnett Hartsfield, the rookie. It's Van Davis Jr. It was the creator of the county side of the Stentorian organization. And, you know, Hartsfield was the city side. And the actual the firefighter that you see down there is a firefighter praying. So we added that to it to just give it the wholeness of the building and what we're about. We're very proud to have that out there.
Well, it is stunning, and it's striking as you're coming down Vernon to see it. So I'm sure people are taken, you know, by it as they go by.
Yeah, we were very lucky to have that sponsored. Very lucky. I'm proud of it. We try to take pictures out there all the time.
Sure. I already did.
Oh, good. Good for you. Good for you.
The organization, and you were involved, a couple years ago did something I thought was really, really interesting. And it wasn't in LA, and it wasn't in California, and it wasn't even in the United States. It was in Zimbabwe.
Zambia.
Zambia. Oh,
yes.
I'm sorry.
Lusaka, Zambia, yes.
Zambia. How did that happen, and what was it?
We were working with the sister cities of Lusaka.
Okay.
Los Angeles sister cities of Lusaka. And someone called us up. I think Chief Everett called me and said, "You want to get involved?" I said, "Absolutely." And we actually worked with the fire department, both county and city. And we took 3 apparatuses over there. We took a 1996 Seagrave engine that was used as a reserve rig for the fire service, and a crew carrier, and what they call a brush carrier from the county. And we organized, fundraised, worked on the logistics, got some other things donated, and we took a whole slew of stuff over there, shipped by container, one, and then on what they call another ship where they actually put the engine on, and went into Dar es Salaam, which was in Tanzania, and then they put it on the train, brought it all the way here, to Lusaka, and was able to help train those folks over there with the fire brigade on how to use the tools and equipment. It was an amazing trip, amazing journey to be able to go that far and to actually help other people.
All right, so if somebody wanted to get information about the Stentorians, the history of the Stentorians, the future of the Stentorians, and how they can help the Stentorians, and by the way, that's the coolest word ever. You know, if Arnett decided on that, that's now become one of my favorite words. Even though you're soft-spoken, I feel the power in what you're saying. How can people find out about it?
You can go on to our website. It's Los Angeles City Stentorians. That's our Facebook page and website as well. So reach out to us, let us know what you want to do, and let's go get it done.
Well, it was really a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Good having you.
Councilmember John Lee is here to share his own experiences and speak out against the brutal and unprovoked crimes targeting Asian Americans. Well, according to a recent study by Cal State University San Bernardino, in U.S. largest cities, hate crimes in 2020 actually decreased by 6%. But in direct contrast, anti-Asian hate crimes increased by over 145%. Well, here to give us a little perspective and hopefully a little hope, I'm delighted to be joined by the council member from the 12th District, John Lee. So nice to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
Well, that's a terrifying statistic. And I think we all became aware of the surge against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, and it was sort of blamed on political rhetoric. Do you think that that is where this started?
I think it's just another example of scapegoating the Asian American community. Throughout our history here in America, unfortunately, we have some incidents that are very similar to what's happening now. The Exclusion Act, where because of the declining wages in the West Coast, where Chinese Americans probably made up 0.002% of the workforce, but they were blamed for it, and so actions were taken against them, whether it was the internment camps where Japanese Americans were being held. And this is just another example where, unfortunately, sometimes leaders use things to deflect and need someone to point at as the reason for whatever the problems are, and this is just another example of that.
So a lot of these incidences may or may not be a hate crime. So what's the legal definition of a hate crime?
Legal definition of hate crime is when a crime occurs when someone is targeted because of their membership or perceived membership of a certain group or demographic. Unfortunately, some examples of hate speech aren't considered that because they're covered under the First Amendment, but it's really when people are perceived attacks against them because they're part of a certain group.
There have been these incidences against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, but now there's just more attention to it and we're hearing about it more.
Absolutely. I think these types of hate crimes have been happening for a long time now, but like you said, the attention is on it. But now we're seeing these incredibly egregious attacks on people who are the elderly in the Asian American community that, are the most vulnerable part of our community is being attacked for no reason. My own mother, who immigrated to this country in 1962, as an American, a proud American, is afraid to leave her apartment because of fear of what's going on in these attacks. And so, while I think they've always been, the highlight is there now, and so just more attention, which is something where, we've asked the communities, because sometimes, whether it be for cultural reasons or a language barrier or even fear, that we haven't been reporting what has been happening out there. And I think right now, because of the attention, people are more feel more free to be able to report what's happening to them. So it has always been there, unfortunately.
I do want to talk about the reporting part of it, but you just mentioned something that is highly personal to you. Mm-hmm. What do you say to your mom? I mean, you are a person that has been in public service your whole life. You are in a position of authority. You are in a position of awareness. What do you say to your mom on the phone when she says, John, I don't want to go out?
Well, honestly, I don't know what to say. I don't blame her for that fear. We've seen it over and over. Even recently, a woman who's not even of Asian background, a Hispanic woman, on a bus here in our area, someone thought that she was of Chinese descent and just started attacking her right on the bus. Fractured her face, bruised up, for no reason. The elderly lady, 85 years old, just getting off a bus, and someone just out of the blue attacked her. These are things that they're truly palpable. This fear that unfortunately so many people in the Asian community are feeling right now.
What are some of the subtle nuanced things that are happening that we may not know about in the news or in the newspaper?
Well, I've really never seen the Asian communities, right? There's so many different numbers of Asian communities really coming together right now. Not as different communities, but as one, trying to work together on what should our short-term goals be? What are those long-term goals? I often say that, I love this country, but I also love my heritage, my Korean background, and celebrate the different cultures, but that doesn't make me any less American or make me love this country any less. And I think that's an experience that a lot of Asian Americans, unfortunately, have felt.
What is the model minority myth?
Right. So, the model minority is always, it's an unfortunate term that was brought up really almost to pit Asian Americans against other minority groups. And it was to paint us in a light where, we understood what it meant to get ahead, and we understood that hard work got you here. Whether they're negative or even so-called positive stereotypes, it's always dangerous when you sort of pigeonhole a person into one sort of class or one type of, representing an entire class of people, that everything fits into that one box of who you are. One of the experiences I remember being a kid, and this was in junior high school, one of my math teachers could not understand why I was struggling in math. And it was just, as a 12 or 13-year-old, really, how do you answer that? Like, I don't understand. Why aren't you better in math, John? Like all the other Asian kids are, excelling in this. And it's almost like I needed some extra help in that area. But because of that perceived notion that somehow, maybe I was just slacking. I was just not trying hard enough. I didn't get that extra attention. It was more just put on me like, well, you're just not trying hard enough, John, where, that's an unfortunate, that positive stereotype, that so-called positive stereotype actually hurt me. And so, that's a, personal experience that I can relate to, and it's just an unfortunate thing, especially when you find out the history of it and how it was used to sort of pit, groups against each other.
Well, you have recently introduced a legislative package for funding and training and education to sort of combat, these hate crimes across a broad swath. So what is this that you've introduced, and what do you want it to be able to achieve?
Well, any time that you can collect the data and really try to understand what is really going on, that only leads to better legislation. So right now we're in that data collecting phase, right? And trying to not only collect that data, but to have a campaign around reaching out to the different communities and letting them know what is a hate crime, when do they report something, why that is so important that you don't just let this incident go by. It's unfortunate right now when we all see this light at the end of the tunnel of coming out of this pandemic, and businesses are trying to, a lot of business owners in predominantly Asian communities are feeling that fear of, okay, we're finally coming out of this, but now I'm really afraid of, being targeted. You can't just be a bystander anymore. You have to speak up, and when you see something happening, be that person to offer that support to, to that situation.
We should also just say, what's going on in the 12th? What's happening?
We're so excited about that light at the end of the tunnel, but we all still recognize that a lot of people are still hurting. And, we have done an incredible job at trying to understand the problems that are happening to our businesses, to people who have lost their jobs, and really set up some great programs so that if you're facing food insecurity, to know that, again, our office should be that office that you reach out to, because there's ways that we can help you. If you're a struggling business, to keep your doors open. We've done everything to try to make sure that when this economy is up, back and running again in full strength, that my district comes back in full force. But as all this is coming to end, how important is to bring community back.
Well, this has been a true pleasure to talk with you. So
thank
you so much.
Thanks for having me here.
And that's a wrap on this LA Current.